I always say it's very hard to control the mind with the mind. It's really, really hard.
You know, you mentioned slave to thought, or some people believe that they're slaves to their thoughts, right? Especially right now, or a few months ago when people were in quarantine, and now people, like, they're potentially going to put people back in quarantine once again. There's been a lot of uptick in terms of just like anxiety, bad negative thoughts. And sometimes, like you mentioned, people feel that they don't have control over that. Now, I'm curious what your take is on that. And if an individual does feel that every single day of the week, they just get a flood or an influx of negative thought over and over and over again, what can they do to impact that in another direction? Can they have any, I guess, control or direction as far as those types of thoughts are concerned?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I think it's one that many people are grappling with. So, you know, I think we can introduce these thoughts. We can realize that our mode of thinking isn't healthy or something. But I always say it's very hard to control the mind with the mind. It's really, really hard. And the reason is because it's encased in this skull. And even though my lab and other labs, of course, are figuring out which brain areas do this, and the amygdala is responsible for threat and all this other stuff, right now, it's very hard to directly manipulate the brain because we don't have little wires in there that we can press the little buttons and do that. If we did, it would work. But right now, the best technology that we have, that everybody has to control their mind and their thinking, especially when they're anxious or in an uncomfortable state, is going to be through action and through the body. And one of the things I think we're really seeing a tide change is that, you know, in the 80s, it was kind of like the brain and everyone talked about consciousness, and there was still kind of remnants from the 60s and 70s that we weren't quite sure what it was all about. Then there were a couple decades, they called actually one of them 2000 to 2010, the decade of the brain, where they were mapping all these brain areas. And I think now it's fair to say, like, for the typical person who wants to get their mind in a better place on a consistent basis, or they're feeling back on their heels, they're waking up and they're like, okay, COVID and elections and, you know, racial tensions and a lot of problems and issues, it can feel overwhelming to people. They've got to take, if they want to adjust their mind to be clear and not just overwhelmed, they've got to take an approach that involves actions of the body. And the one that I'm a big proponent of, and I'm not the only one, of course, is to use respiration and breathing. Now, my orientation toward this is a little bit different than most. First of all, the reason why we want to take control of breathing is that we have one skeletal muscle that's an organ. We have our muscles, but there's one organ that's skeletal muscle, unlike all the rest. So my heart is cardiac muscle. My spleen, I can't move and control. I can't control my heart directly. If I want to calm down, people talk about the vagus nerve, and how do you activate the vagus nerve? Well, you eat a big meal, but that's slow, right? That's slow. Or you can hold your child, or you can do some meditation, super slow. And so when I was first approached by communities that were asking me, you know, how can we get people to modulate their nervous system quickly? I was like, well, the diaphragm is the thing. The diaphragm is skeletal muscle. It's just like a bicep, tricep, quadricep, calf, or anything like that. It was designed to work on its own. You don't have to think about it, but you can consciously take control of it, because there's a nerve called the phrenic nerve, P-H-R-E-N-I-C, E-N-I-C, that's right, phrenic, that connects the diaphragm to the brain and back again. And when you move your diaphragm quickly, so if I breathe quickly, consciously or unconsciously, it sends a signal to the brain that's like, wake up. Something's going on out here. The body is in action. And when you move that slowly, then the signals of the phrenic nerve literally come in like electricity, because that's what nerves use to communicate. And it's bing, bing, bing. It's like a metronome, and the brain starts to calm. So we know that slow breathing and nasal breathing can definitely calm the mind. And so when people's thoughts are spinning out and they're not doing well, you want to say, slow down, breathe, consciously breathe. But that's not quite good enough for a scientist, right? We want to know, how do you breathe exactly? And the cool thing is, there's a discovery that was made just in the last 2 years of a set of neurons that you have, I have, everybody has, that about 200 neurons that live in the brainstem. Neurons, by the way, for folks is out there, is just a nerve cell, just like liver cell would be liver cell, nerve cell, neuron. So those cells are in the brainstem, and they control a specific pattern of breathing that was designed over hundreds of thousands of years to calm animals and human beings quickly. It activates the phrenic nerve in a particular way, and the pattern of breathing is a double inhale followed by an extended exhale. So dogs do this right before they go down for a nap. You do this periodically about once every 2 or 3 minutes during sleep. And people who are put into a high stress environment where their carbon dioxide levels go up start to do this, or they sort of attempt to do this. It looks like this. It looks kind of silly anytime you do deliberate breathing on video, but I'll do it because I think it's helpful to see. So it's a double inhale followed by an extended exhale. And it's not the same as just doing a big inhale or a big exhale. That second little inhale at the end, that really, what it does is when you inhale, you inflate these little sacs in the lungs, the alveoli of the lungs. And that second inhale brings them to this really like rigid form that pulls a little bit of extra carbon dioxide out of the bloodstream, so that when you exhale, you offload extra carbon dioxide. Because there's another set of neurons in the brainstem that measure carbon dioxide in the bloodstream, and they are largely responsible for setting your level of stress and anxiety. The important thing for people to realize is that just 1 or 3 of these, what are called physiological sighs, this is actually in medical textbook, it's the physiological sigh, doing 2 inhales followed by an exhale, then maybe another time, will bring the state of stress down faster than anything that I'm aware of by offloading carbon dioxide. And the cool thing is, everyone has these neurons. It's like you have to maybe learn it from like how to do it exactly, but there's no neuroplasticity required. The moment you do this, you're going to start to calm yourself. Now, the heart rate comes down more slowly. You actually don't want your heart rate to just cliff. That's called bradycardia. And that's why people who see blood, who are like freaked out about blood, they pass out. It's because their heart rate went down too quickly. So a lot of people are concerned that when they're feeling stressed or they're anxious, they're like, my heart rate it won't come down. It won't come down. It's like, it was designed to taper off a little slowly.
What's up, Para Project family? It's time to stop dressing like you're a fucking preschooler and step your game up by checking out Vuori clothing. Now, I'm not one to talk. I wear a fucking pink hat that has a dog on it, but at the end of the day, at least my shirt and shorts are popping. So head to Vuori because they have great stuff for your top and your bottom. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, you guys got to head over to vuori.com/power project. That's VUORI.com/power project, and you guys will automatically receive 20% off your order. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes. Let's get back to the podcast.
So physiological sighs are a pattern of breathing that Mother Nature designed for us to use to calm ourselves. And animals use it. They know this. We just, for whatever reason, we think we need to use elaborate breathing protocols. I actually use, obviously, I'm the smallest guy in the room here, the sort of virtual room, but I've long been looking for tools that would allow me to train more intensely when it's time to train intensely, and to back off either in between sets, or the recovery process, as you guys know better than I do, begins in the workout. You don't want to just go ham the entire time, because you're burning off energy that you could apply for deliberate action. We can talk a little bit more about this. It relates to a different brain circuit. But to just make a succinct answer to your question, for people that are stressed, their thoughts are spinning out. Don't try and control your thoughts with your thoughts. That's a failing proposition. And in most times it won't work. Just telling someone to calm down is about the worst thing you can do. Telling yourself to calm down is the worst thing you can do. Pull on a lever. The lever that you've got a lever for calm, and that's this diaphragm phrenic nerve connection. Double inhale exhales are the best way that I'm aware of. And we can measure this in the lab. You can see people, and we put people into high states of stress using virtual reality, claustrophobia, heights, white sharks. We find your pain point. And then we give them tools that allow them to learn how to adjust their nervous system quickly. And other labs have worked on this and published in fine journals, Nature, Cell Reports. These are published peer-reviewed articles. And if you want to do a breath practice, like you're a Wim Hof or Tumo breathing, or you're into the XPT thing, which I think those guys are great, or Brian McKenzie, all great communities. But that's more about taking 5 or 10 minutes a day and raising your level of stress, right? So deep breathing, like, then offloading all that carbon dioxide, and then holding my breath, kind of Wim Hofish type stuff. Mm-hmm. which is really tumo breathing. That's about training your nervous system to be comfortable with high levels of adrenaline in it. That's different. That's like an ice bath. That's like, you're going to throw yourself into challenge and learn how to tolerate it. That's very different than what I'm talking about with these double inhale exhales. The double inhale exhales are the kind of thing that I give to, my mom as a tool, or I hand off to somebody who's unlikely to take on a breathwork practice, because those breathwork practices are about raising your stress threshold so that your trigger point is higher. And one of the things I blab about this a lot, I'm doing that right now, is because I feel like people have heard like breath work, but like, what are we really talking about? Sometimes you need a tool where like you get the troubling text, you're going to pick up your kid or you're dealing with something. You need something right there. You're not going to start like doing deep breathing or you're in conversation. So that's really important to have something like in your kit. You need a real-time tool, and that double inhale exhale, what's called a physiological sigh in the textbooks, is what I think is most useful. So don't try and control your mind with your mind, control your mind with your body, and then your mind will be in a place where you can steer it. That's my answer.
Doctor, can you explain, like, especially if somebody does have depression or anxiety, it can be confusing and just downright frustrating because nobody wakes up and says, I want to focus on all the negative stuff today. I want to have a bad day. But our brain is essentially designed to focus on the negative. Am I right on that? Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's because, your nervous system, the nervous system, sadly, is mainly designed to keep you safe. So like neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change in response to experience. It's hard to change your brain. If you want to learn a new language and you're older than 25, it's hard. If you're 14 and you're listening to this, learn a language and learn an instrument, please, because trust me, it's so much harder later. It's so easy when you're young because the young brain is designed to be plastic and to customize itself based on its experience. Once you hit about 25, 28 or so, there's a whole different set of processes related to shifting your brain structure and function. We talk about what those differences are. There are protocols you can use. They're actually very powerful. The reason why people are mainly fear-focused, threat-focused, et cetera, is that the nervous system's main job is to make sure that you get what you need. It doesn't care if you feel good doing it. It really doesn't. And so being happy, feeling pretty good most of the time takes work, and it takes ongoing work. It's sort of like you can think about the body's main function is to supply enough nutrients and fuel. If you just sit there and do nothing, you start to, eventually just deteriorate. Muscles will atrophy, connective tissue won't be as healthy. So you have to do work to support your body and your organs and its longevity and function, strength, explosiveness, endurance, all of that. You have to do the work. And I think one of the things that's beautiful about the fitness culture is that, and it's eventually, spilled over into general culture. I remember when, weightlifting gyms, bodybuilding gyms, and yoga studios were like really niche. Because I'm 45 years old, I remember, you didn't see it except maybe training for football or something, weight rooms. And then now, like, there are gyms everywhere. People understand your body's not going to work well unless you do the work. And the mind and the brain are exactly the same. I think in 10 years, 20 years, we're going to look back and be like, that was crazy. We thought that if you just kind of lived your life, you'd be okay. But then, of course, people were miserable, depressed, anxious. You need to use your nervous system deliberately. And there are a lot of stories that people make up, like, oh, before phones and before modern times, we had enough to occupy our attention that we weren't anxious. I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. I think that, when we lived in caves, it was stressful. I think we were always worried. People, think about before communications, people used to go off wandering, looking for food, and they might never come back. You didn't know, did they find someone new? Did they find a better village? There are all sorts of things that the nervous system has designed to detect threat and sense what's going on inside us, sense what's going on outside us, and try and match our inner state to the external landscape. So this is why I think it's so crucial that people start to look at their nervous system, these nerve cells, as the most important aspect of their body, because it controls everything, physical performance, emotional performance, etc., and really start thinking about, like, if you're unhappy, how do you ratchet in there and start doing the work? What's the work? And unfortunately, a lot of it has been like passive stuff, what I call passive coping. It's like, I'm going to watch inspirational stories, but then those are great and I love them, and they can get you fired up, but they're fleeting. You need them a lot of times. You want to think about what are active coping. What are the things that are fully within the confines of your skin, including your brain and everything else, that you can activate anytime. It's always there for you. And you look at people that have like what I call like true confidence, it's, yeah, they need their nutrition, they need their supplements, they need their community. Those are all very powerful levers to feel better and do better. And I engage in those too. But they have the sense that within the confines of their skin, they have a kit of tools as well. And I think that, without going too off track, think about a baby. A baby's born. We were all babies at one point. And you don't know if you're hungry. You just feel agitated. You're like, you cry, and then someone meets your need. You like need a diaper change. You're like, and then they're like, that. You weren't like, I need a diaper change. You're like, this is uncomfortable. So Mother Nature designed this very generic response, which is the adrenaline response, or norepinephrine in the brain and adrenaline from the adrenals, that makes us uncomfortable. And the first rule we learn when we come into this world is like, when I don't feel good, look outside me, look to my phone, look to the thing. Now, I don't think we all need to be like in a little container. We want social connection. We can rely on other people. It's awesome. It's important for our human species to be able to connect. It's a big source of support. But if people don't want to be miserable, they need to think about learning how to control the nervous system. Those physiological sighs are one way. The other way that I would say to shift mood.
Hey, baby. I'm joking. Guys, like, comment, subscribe, and head to the Power Project Discord, all right? I know you enjoyed the video. Speak to y'all soon.